And so welcome to the show. Today we have Komal.
Thank you so much, Anuradha.
She is an expert in midlife crisis relationships. She is a well-established life coach in Canada. And I have specially requested her to come over here and talk to you guys. And so I would begin the podcast by asking her to speak about herself, and once she's done, we can begin with the question and answer. So welcome, Smriti. A very warm welcome to you. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anuradha. It's my pleasure to be here. And let me just correct. You said that I'm a well-established coach in Canada. I really aspire to be that well-established in Canada, but Canada is pretty new to me as a country. I came here in November last year. Before that, I've been in India. I've been born and raised in India. I have studied there. I've worked there for more than 15 years in corporate, and coming to Canada is a quite a recent event in my life, and I do hope to get very well settled here. And yes, that's correct. I am a coach by profession, and this is also something that I changed in last few years. Before that, as I mentioned, I'd worked in corporate in multinational companies, and my work involved me working along with people coming from all across the world, coming from different cultures, and I would help them and their families get settled in India. So I was in the field of global mobility, and that gave me an opportunity to look very deeply into people from diverse backgrounds and into their lives. And then, although these people would be holding designations like CEO, CFO, MDs, directors, VPs, and all, but I had an opportunity to look at them closely in their personal lives, in their home fronts, and at a time in life which involves a lot of change. When people are moving countries, it's a huge change, it's a huge transition. And so how they react and how they respond in the time of that huge change, and how do they cope up with it in a new cultural environment, was very interesting and insightful. It helped me learn a lot about human behavior and how change can really impact our lives. I've seen some of the best and the worst behaviors. And so that deep curiosity into human behavior and how what works and what doesn't work, and how things can be made better in life, was a very important part in me considering coaching being a relationship coach as my life choice or decision. And of course, apart from my professional life, there've been a lot in the personal life also. It sort of inspired me to take on this as my career option, and to deal with what people try to run away from, that is emotions, relationships, some things that people are really not that open to talk about. I talk about all those issues, all those matters with them. And yeah, so that's pretty much about me.
Great knowing you more, Komalji. So I would like to begin with my first question. Please throw some light on what exactly is midlife crisis, because many people are not aware. They have heard about this term, but they don't know the complete gamut of it. And then, when does it actually set in men and women, and with a special context in India?
Okay, so midlife crisis, as the term says, midlife. So this does indicate to you that it's a time related, or it's a age related crisis that we speak about. Now, this is not a very old term in use. It was only used in 1965 for the first time by an American psychologist who, in his book, explained the phenomena of midlife crisis. Uh, Now, just like it happens with a lot of terms, people start to lose the exact context in which this midlife crisis was used, and then every other sort of a problem that start to happen in your 30s or 40s or 50s can be termed as a midlife crisis. But no, every problem that you face in your life is not a midlife crisis. uh, to be precise, it's just it's a very unique situation that happens with people when they go through a phase of depression. So it's not like one single lone event that has happened. No, midlife crisis is actually a phase that you enter into, that you go through, which is determined by a lot of lows and down periods in your mood. You feel depressed for a time period, and as the midlife term suggests, it's considered somewhere in between, starting from 45 to 55 years. Now, assuming that the full lifespan is like 90 to 100 years, so it was termed as midlife. But a lot of changes have been observed after this term was being used for so many years. Like these days, with the generation who we called as millennials, or the younger generation, they even experience these sort of dips, and a long-term phase of depression in their lives, even in their 20s. Some would face it even in their 30s. So it's really a very debatable question as to at what point of time in your life the midlife crisis would hit you. Or is it like a one-off an event that happens once in your lifetime? Some people may say that they have experienced midlife crisis over, in more than once or more than twice uh, in their growing up years. But what's really key to understand is that uh, it's not like that one of an instance, like where somebody is out of out of some sort of a setback, have taken a decision and would term it as, oh, I'm going through midlife crisis and that's why I'm doing that, and then brush past a lot of things aside. No, I think it's very important to understand that it's just a psychological term, but this term sort of indicates certain other larger problems that need to be talked about and that need to be addressed. And there are a lot of ways to deal with this midlife crisis. And also, it is not sure that it will happen with everybody, so that people who are approaching 40s would start to feel an anxiety that, oh, I'm now coming in my 40s and I'm going to have a midlife crisis. And then what happens is, every small incident that happens that makes you feel a little low, you feel like, oh, I'm hitting midlife crisis. And that psyche sort of replicate. I would say no, don't anticipate and expect, because crisis in itself is a big term. It's not like one of an incident. It's not like someday you're feeling gloomy, or if somebody has passed away in your life, right? In your family, and you're going through a period of grief, you cannot just term it as midlife crisis, because it is very natural when such incident happen in life, where maybe you lost your job, or maybe you lost some near and dear one in the family, and that sort of put you in a phase of anxiety or grief, because those are very natural reactions and responses to such actions happening. So that those things cannot be termed as midlife crisis. Midlife crisis is more associated with, there is no apparent reason, so to say, which you can indicate with the midlife crisis. It's just, if I open it up more through my own personal experience, It's more associated with a life phase transition, wherein there are a lot of existential questions that come to you about, what is the purpose of my life, or what is the meaning of my life, what have I done so far, what have I achieved so far, have I done enough, or is this what I was supposed to be doing with my life, those sort of existential questions start to come to you at the onset of midlife crisis. And so with some people, as I said, it can happen in their 40s, when they have sort of lived a considerable amount of life, when they've gone through certain levels in their career also, they've had children also, and then the children are also getting adjusted. And in that transition phase of life, you start to think about the deeper meaning and the deeper questions, and that's the time when you experience. Now, it's also been observed that with certain younger generation people who are born with so much of information that we never had in our growing up year, they mature faster, and they've probably seen more than what we'd seen in all these years much earlier. So is that their midlife crisis? Probably, could be. But that is my understanding of midlife crisis is, and so it need to be dealt a bit differently.
Okay, so people in this age, like 40 to 45, both men and women whom I meet in my life, I have seen that women, they tend to analyze their marriage, especially people who have not been working and they have been homemakers. They feel, I wish I had married that person instead of the person I am married to, and then they feel sad because they think about lost opportunities, and sometimes they look outside of the marriage for some extramarital affairs also. And men, suppose they took up some career based on their father's advice, suppose they became engineers, then in at 40 to 45 they think, I wish I could have been a painter, or I could have done something else. So then they become very sad. Oh, I'm not using the word depressed, because depression, I think, needs some medication. They generally are feeling low in life. So do you have any suggestion for such type of people? Do you want to explain this behavior a little bit more, Komal?
Your observation is quite apt. It's quite accurate and true. It does happen, and it's not necessarily that these questions are only specific to ladies or men, but I would say that both these reasons are quite apt, and there could be other reasons also. So what happens is that you've made certain life choices in terms of your career, in terms of your life partner, in terms of how you lead your life. And then after living a certain considerable time period, you start to feel that sort of a dissonance in you, and you say that, something else could have been better. Could have been, but you don't know for sure. But that dissonance, that feeling of dissonance in the back of your mind, it always stays there, which doesn't let you stay satisfied and stay happy and content in your life. So what I would say is that whenever such situation happen, and it is bound to happen, uh, because the way our generations have been taught to live, we live quite vicariously, which means that we sort of follow the trends in the family, or the value systems, or the ru- norms of the society, and not really spend that kind of time in our younger growing up years on self analysis and self awareness, and knowing ourselves, and knowing as to what exactly we want to do in our lives, what sort of life we want to uh, aspire for. A lot of our aspiration in our youth is influenced by a lot of other factors. Sometimes our concept and ideas of love are formed by the films that we watch, the kind of music we listen to, the stories we see. So we really don't have a real life perspective. And so it is quite natural that after a certain time period, those decisions will start to come back to haunt you, and it can be triggered by anything, any sort of an event in your life. So that dissonance is quite natural. What I would like to state in this situation is that whenever you experience that sort of a dissonance in your life, that's the time when you need to take a very serious action to understand, first of all, where that dissonance is coming from, instead of being very reactive and thinking. Usually what happens is, it's a tendency of human mind that the state where you are in, if you're feeling dissonance, you would like to go to the just opposite state. But that just opposite state may not be the correct answer, may not be the correct state to be. So what will happen? You will just start to find everything wrong in your current state, in your marriage, or in the current job or career that you're facing. And then you will just suddenly want to leave. And so this dissonance can increase to such a level in people that it can become a cause of their anxiety and stress. It's also like a self-fulfilled prophecy, that once a thing has been stuck in your mind, you think that, oh, you have to just come out of it. You have to just come out of it. And then you end up making decisions which, instead of providing you a solution, can further aggravate your situation. Maybe you leave a job suddenly without a plan and go foolishly after something, and it may not work for you. And then again, you're in trouble. So instead of being very reactive in such situation, I think people need to sit back, take a time, talk about these things. That is the first step, that you talk about what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And I would say some people who do talk about these with the friends, they may not be the most appropriate or most right person, because
I agree. Yeah.
Because a friend can hear you, but what if the friend end up further aggravating your state of anxiety? So people better need to go and talk to somebody who can really help them navigate through that phase, and instead of giving them the suggestions, because suggestions could be as many that, as many people, as many number of suggestions. And in this situation, to resolve the dissonance in your mind, you do not need a suggestion coming from outside. Rather, you need to go within yourself. You need to explore within yourself, one, where this dissonance is coming from. Why is it coming up now at this point of time? And what has triggered this? How can you resolve it in the best possible manner? And such sort of a conversation and such sort of support can only be provided by somebody who is not giving you an advice, who's not suggesting you something, but who is helping you explore, your own inner self. And I am a firm believer of the fact that we all always have our own solutions within us. We just need to learn to how to reach that space of solution. If the problems generate out of within our own minds and thoughts, the solutions also can come out of our own minds and thoughts. We just need to be taught how. How to approach that space inside us, which holds the solutions for us and not really the problems. So, and every crisis or every trouble or every dissonance, I would say, is an indicator. Just like fever is an indicator of a problem inside your body. Fever is not an ailment. Fever is not the problem. Fever is just an indicator of some problem happening inside your body. Similarly, all these crises, all the dissonance is just a sign. It's just a symptom of something else, something which is more deeper inside you, and that something else need to be treated and not really the signs or the symptoms. And that can only be done by somebody who understands, first of all, these situations that you're in. I do understand that in India, in West, still people don't mind going and talking to professionals, and you know, and making some sort of a bringing out some solutions for their own lives. But I do understand that culturally, or due to various other reasons in India, people are not still that open. Uh, First thing I think is people are not even that aware that they can do something about it, that there is support available for these kind of issues and problems. That is first thing. And second thing is, which I don't understand why it is such a huge stigma. It's quite an interesting, Anuradha. I have experienced in my own life and the lives of very close friends of mine, where I've heard this dialogue so many times that, oh, you know, uh, you're not strong enough if you just go out and talk about your personal life to other people. I mean, come on. You would rather keep sulking, you would rather keep yourself in trouble than really open up and talk about your issues. I mean, it's not like you're trying to gain some attention or you're trying to play a victim card, but really, solution will come to you. You will be able to reach the solution only once you're open to talk about it. So, first thing that need to be dealt is this ego, which comes within ourselves, because ego combined with this dissonance is a very, very lethal combination. That doesn't let people to reach towards the solution. So for once, just shed the stigma, shed these guards, and just talk about where, in what situation you are. And those who are open to discuss, who are open to listen and open to share, they reach the solutions also. They're able to find that strength within themselves, that somebody can just help them through and guide them through to reach the solutions for any kind of crisis, let alone be the midlife crisis.
Very well described, Komal. Thank you so much. Now I want to ask, suppose I am your client, I am approaching you to for some symptoms I am feeling, such as loneliness, stress and anxiety. And I find out within myself that this is due to this reason. For example, my boss is very rude to me, or I am staying alone in USA. I have just relocated from some country, so I am facing loneliness. This is what I have realized. So as a life coach, can I get some advice from you, like crossing you eat to bring down your fever, and then you go for further treatment. So I want some immediate relief, like I'll be coming to you, I'll be having your sessions, but can you, as a life coach, you can advise me how to overcome loneliness, stress and anxiety. Now these are three different topics, but I am combining them to give you some idea of some negative feelings I am having. So can I do something to just be peaceful for this week, for some time, while I search for a new job, or do something? Am I able to convey my question to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that, Anuradha. First of so there are three elements in this question that you've asked. One is that, and that is the tendency of anybody who is in a state of anxiety or state of distress, that they would want a quick relief. So first thing first, there are no shortcuts or quick reliefs in the areas where it is required to work within yourself, on yourself. When you have to work on yourself, there are no shortcuts. You have to commit to work on yourself for a good time period, you know. And then the whole thing is, one more thing which elevates our anxiety is this tendency of us being in such a fast and such a hurried life and wanting the quick fixes all the times and not just allowing ourselves to just sit back, relax, take couple of deep breaths and say that, okay, now I am ready to think about it. This is first and foremost is very important. And so whenever somebody was say, oh, I need quickly something, I say, relax, just take a few breaths, and that instantly put the people in a little quieter place, in a little safe place, which is very important to for everybody to feel. Understand, no shortcuts. Learn to slow down and take little deep breaths, which is very important. Second thing is, which is quite crucial for us as coaches to understand, is that the client who we are dealing with, or the person who is in front of us, and the kind of symptoms that they are facing, are they coachable or do they need a psychiatric support? Because anxiety, depression, and stress, these are some certain such phenomena that people could be at very different levels of these anxieties. So some have this chronic psychological anxiety for which they are taking medication or they need medication. So once we talk to them, we sort of understand whether they have a history, where they've been taking medications. And in such cases, I think before we take any step forward, we just ask them to refer or to check with what they've already been going through. Because without knowing the background and a little bit about the the psychological state of the person, you don't want to put them in a situation where they are further distressed. So that is one precaution which as coaches we do take. And when we know that, okay, this person is capable and strong enough to be able to pull themselves out from their state of distress to a different state or a different level by the interventions of coaching, by the conversations, or by certain other models, or the coaching modalities that we can follow, then only we proceed with that person and offer them our solutions and suggestions. And there are so many different ways in the coaching, and there are so many different modalities. There is NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, where by the way of conversation, by the way of using certain tools and techniques, you can help the client. There is transformational coaching theories using which you can just transform. So depending upon how a person learns and understands the best, you pick and choose different modalities and help them go through. But one thing is for sure, that it's a long-term commitment. As I said, midlife crisis is also not like a one-off and instant. It's a phase to go through. So that is what the coaches need to explain to the client pretty well, that this can resolve. It's just that they need to be committed for a longer time duration period. And very important, that they need to be committed. As a coach, you are there to support them, but the main task has to be done by them, because it's their life. Without them taking an action, without them, becoming aware, without them having an answerability towards themselves, it's not like you can give them a pill, they can pop a pill and everything will be better.
I have one last question, Komalji.
Sure.
Suppose I am coming to you as a life coach with some problem like depression or midlife crisis. So approximately, if I am willing to be a good student of yours, how much time will I take to become okay? Okay, do you have some time, rough time period in your mind Suppose I start coaching with you today. Today's the first day. So, does it take very long, or do you have any average in your mind?
Uh, as I said, it absolutely depend upon the level of commitment of the person. You know, how committed a person is towards their own growth. And why I'm saying this time and over again is because we have observed this, and not just me, but a lot of other fellow coaches have observed this, that people would want their life problems to vanish. But when it comes to making that conscious efforts, they may not be that motivated. So, as a coach, of course, it is also my job to make sure that the client feels motivated enough to take the actions. But then that action is very important, that whatever they have committed in the session. So how it happens is like, as a coach.
I'm just sorry to interrupt you here. I've heard in books, I've heard from people and read in books, it takes 40 days to break a habit. For if I'm a chain smoker, so if 40 day this period is holds true, that was my
Well, these are all research based outputs or results that have been given, but it's really and they hold quite a lot of truth, that to break a habit you do need a 40 days a time period or a 40 days commitment, and then it can sort of become like, but then you need to show up that constant effort, that you are making an effort and you're making an attempt. And in coaching also, we say that if you have to work on one sort of, if you want to acquire one new habit or one new change that you want to do in your behavior, then it does take as many weeks of intervention and as many weeks of constantly working. But then every human is a different individual. Some may be able to achieve it in a lesser time period, some may be able to achieve it in a longer duration also. But whenever we work with a client, we try and ask them to commit to any specific phase for, I would say, at least 6 months time period. So we say, before you want to see any positive results happening in your life, like transformation and all, give yourself a good 6 months of time period, so that you can take that constant effort towards it and then build. And it's a lifelong, whatever change you're making, it stays with you forever. And you end up learning certain skill sets which become a part of you, which become a part of your habit, which will be there for the rest of your life. So that's sort of a time commitment, it makes quite a lot of sense. And in any case, learning is a lifelong phenomenon. It doesn't happen that you've just learned something, but the 6 months is a very active phase, where you'll be bringing in something new in your life almost every other day. So that's how it is. And yeah, one important thing that I wanted to mention here about the coaching is that usually what happens is that any problem, any sort of situation the clients bring in a coaching conversation. So coaching conversations usually last for 1 hour or 1.5 hour or so. So you can't anticipate a change to happen in just 1.5 hour. The real change happens after that 1.5 hour. Because in that 1.5 hour of conversation, a client would have reached some sort of an awareness, found some sort of an insight within them, and would have committed to some action. That, okay, this is the next step for me. This is what I commit to do. And then the coach ensures that the client is motivated enough, is supported enough, and has all sort of a support that he or she requires to honor that commitment that they've made. And then the client goes back and work on whatever they've committed. Then they come back and then they share, whether they've achieved some result, what has happened and what has come up, how they've been able to manage the situation. And then there are follow-ups one after another. And then it's a periodic step-by-step intervention that kind of supports and gives the client a safe space to come and talk and then make their own decisions, better decisions, I would say.
All right, Komalji, so I've exhausted my list of questions. If there's anything you want to say to my viewers, you're most welcome before we end the session. Anything you want to talk about your clients, your experience, whatever.
There's one thing which I always, I believe personally in my own life, it has showed up like this. And I always tell people that every crisis or every dissonance or every trouble is just an invitation to bring some better change in your life, is an invitation for transformation. So if we stop looking at it as a problem, but as a, whatever motivates people, maybe look at it as a challenge if a challenge motivates you, or maybe just look at it as an opportunity to make something better than what it already is. And that sort of helps, because what happens with problems is that nobody wants to look at problems. You would always want to either ignore or avoid or just hope and pray that, okay, somehow magically that problem disappears from your life. That's how we think about problems. So these situations, life situations, whatever happen, it's not a problem. It's an indicator, it's an alert for you, or it's an opportunity for you to change yourself. And please, instead of having the first inclination towards changing the situation, look within yourself and say how and what you can change within you so that the situation doesn't bother you as much. Because the amount of energy and time we all put in trying to resolve the situation, if we put just 5% of that time and energy in bringing the change within ourselves, we are sorted. So it's not that we don't make efforts, but our efforts are misplaced most of the times. We're trying to change something outside of us, and things outside of us are not in our control. So don't try and resolve the situation. Try and resolve within you. Like, if something is bothering you, what is making it so bothersome for you? That need to be resolved, because outside will always be out of the control. But when your inside is within your control, then everything is fine. Then you can go through any sort of crisis. And I think that is one very important attitude to have. Look within.
I'm finding myself very peaceful and calm after talking to you. Also, this was a question after session. I feel like you were coaching me personally, and I feel really it's a very good start of my day. All thanks to you. So I can imagine your clients are so lucky to have somebody like you as a coach, your guru. I'm sure you are helping them a lot, Komalji.
Thank you so much, Anuradha-ji, for reaching out to me, and I am more than happy to talk about this work. It's very close to my heart, and I'm really, really in gratitude to you for presenting me with this platform.
It is my pleasure. I hope to talk to you in the coming months for another session. I hope you will find time for us, and thank you so much, and have a nice evening. I know it's very late in Canada. Have a nice week.
That's okay.
All right.
You too. Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.